Let's get started then. I'm pleased to introduce the candidates with us tonight running for state representative for the 8th District Position 2. They're Greg McConnell, Matt Binke, and Christopher Tracy. As before, the candidates will be addressed in the order in which they filed. Once again, you'll have 2 minutes for your opening statements, 1.5 minutes for your responses, and 1.5 minutes for your closing statements. So let's begin with opening statements. Mr. McConnell, you filed first.
I'm pleased to be here tonight. I'd like to start by thanking the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum. You know, it's impossible to overstate the importance of this upcoming primary. It has been years and years and years since this district has had an open seat in the State House of Representatives. Over those years, a lot has changed. This district has evolved and grown from being primarily adjacent but distinctively different communities into one very dynamic, vibrant, and diverse community here in the Tri-Cities. It's important your next representative have a broad and deep understanding of the myriad of challenges and opportunities that face this district going forward. Opportunities and challenges that are complex and transcend any individual city, organization, or special interest group. My years of service on regional boards such as the WSU Tri-Cities Advisory Council, the Executive Committee of TriDec, Visit Tri-Cities, and now as chair of the Regional Chamber's My Tri 2030 Regional Visioning Project makes me well qualified to represent this community. It's also been a couple decades since anyone with serious business sector experience has gone to Olympia to represent this district's businesses. My decades of business experience will serve you well. I believe the pursuit of responsible, accountable, and transparent government should drive the actions, not just the talking points of your elected officials. Over 40 years in community journalism, I've seen far too often that's not the case. It's time for the interests of the citizens of this district to take priority over provincialism, partisan politics, and political careers. If that's what you want, please consider voting for me, Greg McConnell, Republican, for State House of Representatives. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Binke, your opening statement, please.
Thanks, Tracy. Again, thank you for all showing up tonight on this hot evening. My name is Matt Binke, and I am the Benton County Republican Party nominee running for Washington State Legislature District 8, Position 2, and I'm here to earn your vote and ask for it. I am the local kid. I'm the one who grew up here. I'm the one who grew up in the Tri-Cities, the only one around, it seems like. I'm a graduate of Kamaikan High School, a proud product of the Kennewick School District. Went up to a little town called Cheney, graduated from Eastern Washington, and became one of the top cadets out of the state of Washington to earn a slot at the helicopter school in Army Aviation down at Fort Rucker, Alabama. After 21 years from Desert Storm until as recently as Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi freedom, and some other freedoms that are around the world, my wife allowed me the opportunity to come back home and then retire in the confines of the western United States here. And I say that because she has 51% of the vote all the time. I was sitting around, and when I initially got the job at the Corps of Engineers, I think it just went dead. Nope. And then I came out with an opportunity to help out my cyber background to go out to a little plant called Energy Northwest and secure our electrical grid, which I think is a priority. I then had an opportunity to talk to a guy named President Rich Cummins, you may know of him, over at a little school across the river to start what we now have as one of 3 in the state of Washington cybersecurity programs that allow a bachelor's degree here in our community. I also want to see that we allow the opportunities of people who have an elected experience and, like our opponents say, are most qualified to take this to the next level, to go up to the state with our concerns that we have as a community, to build onto that at the state. I believe our highest priority is the fiscal health of the 8th District, and the big 3 I want to push are education, energy, and the economy. I believe job creation is the key to a strong economy. I believe education as a teacher needs to be more robust, and I disagree with some of the other candidates. I believe teachers need to be paid as high as they possibly can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Binke. Mr. Tracy, your opening statement, please.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. Do what you can when you can. That's the creed that I've always lived my life by. Simply said, I'm running for office because I want to watch the backs of students, families, workers, veterans, the disabled, and senior citizens. And I've got a record that shows you that I can do it. For 40 years, I was a teacher. For 10 years on Guam, I taught Air Force dependents. For some of you that are maybe as old as I am, I was even on the Guam Bicentennial Task Force that helped celebrate our birthday. And that was pretty neat. For 30 years, I was a teacher in Washington, kind of between Seattle and Everett in the North Shore School District. For 20 years, I was a bargainer, a table team bargainer. My contracts that I was the senior bargainer on drove budgets of like $600 million over a 3-year period. The contracts that I have negotiated over 20 years drove budgets of over $3 billion. I've got the experience to work with budget and to work with people in Olympia and get things done. For 20 years, I was on the North Shore School District Health Benefit Committee. We ran our own medical insurance program. We collected the money, we wrote the program, and we paid the bills. And by the way, we did it better than anybody else that we could find. What are my legislative agendas? Well, I want to get the most value out of your tax money. I want to improve school security and still make them welcome. I want to reduce college tuition, and I want to promote a fair tax system for our state. I'm Chris Tracy. Look for me on Facebook.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Tracy. Now we'll move on to the question and answer period with these candidates. Mr. McConnell, you will be up first. Shall we start with an audience question? We shall. Would you support funding for children health funds and school lunch programs, senior citizen health care, and medical care for first responders?
Wow, that's a complex question. Yeah, I think certainly we want to provide. Can you read that again?
Yes, so the three things
Okay.
were children health funds, school lunch programs, senior citizen health care, and medical care for first responders.
Yeah, well, I think, I'm not sure what student health funds might constitute. The devil is always in the details with those types of proposals. I think it's important that we provide funding for education and for our schools for those kids that come to school hungry. I think we have a responsibility to ensure that they have the necessary support so they can go on and study and to be successful. I think the supporting programs for our senior citizens is also critical. And I think that funding programs such as that are important. The question always is how much and where does the money come from? And I think the first step in answering those questions is to look at the programs that are currently in place, understand what their capabilities are, and how in fact those dollars are being invested to make sure we're getting the optimum impact for our investment. I just can't imagine not supporting reasonable efforts to provide nutrition and safety for our children and our seniors and for our firefighters.
Thank you very much, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Binky.
Can you repeat?
Absolutely. Would you support funding for children health funds and school lunch programs, senior citizen health care, and medical care for first responders?
Yes, thanks again, Tracy. Yes, I agree. As a military officer, when you're deployed, one of the biggest things you remind yourself of, it's not just the individual that deploys with you going overseas. They're separated from the family. The family is a critical part of our city, our community, and if we're not supporting our families out there, then I don't know what we're here for. As a true leader that we go forth and go represent, we represent the voice of the people and the citizens out there. If we're not taking care of the people, then you should fire us right now and take care of somebody else out there. I'm all for taking care of students getting into the classroom. When they get to the classroom as a teacher, the less distractions we have there, the better they can learn. When they're fed, they don't have to worry about their grumbling in their stomach. They're worried about the next homework or how the teacher's going to work on the topics of the day. Senior citizens are near to our hearts because we have a growing populations and we need to take care of the healthcare within that. And also as a military officer, we do have contingency plans for our first responders, and I'm proud to say that I'm endorsed by the local firefighters union that are around here in the law enforcement, fraternal order of police. And we've discussed our emergency response, school safety, and things that we can do with our citizens here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Binky. Mr. Tracy.
You know, it's a really complicated question, so I'd like you to
It
repeat
is.
it one more time.
I would be happy to once I find it. There it is. Would you support funding for children health funds and school lunch programs, senior citizen health care, and medical care for first responders?
Okay, I'm going to answer this on several levels. For some of you may not know, but in the last legislative session, there was a bill that really did help put extra funding into comprehensive children's care. So we really do have comprehensive children's care already available. The problem is a lot of it is through Medicaid. Medicaid pays about 20 cents on a dollar, so trying to find a doctor or a dentist to provide it is sometimes a difficult chore. So we have to really work on Medicaid funding. With school lunch programs, they're being funded right now, but what we need to do is be more creative in how we deliver those school lunch programs. For example, if your bus gets to school so late that you don't have time to get your free or reduced breakfast, you don't get breakfast that morning. So what we need to do is be more creative in school. So one school that I really appreciate what they are doing is they have a nutrition break after about an hour into the school day, and in that point they can serve breakfast. So if your bus got there late, or if you got dropped off late, or if you woke up late, you still get breakfast. Lastly, with adults, seniors, do you realize that Medicare does not reimburse adult family homes for food? Only services. We can do better. I will protect those people's backs. And I promise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tracy. Mr. Binky, you'll be up first on this one. It's expected that more Goodness, let's just start over. Mr. Binky, you're up first on this one. It's expected that more precipitation will fall as rain instead of snow in the years ahead. That would affect Eastern Washington a lot since we don't currently have a storage system large enough to save water for summer irrigation. How important do you think this problem might be, and what could be done to prepare for it?
It is going to be a big issue. Could you hear me all right?
Yeah, there it goes.
I do think there is steps that are in place right now within the cities that people may not know about, especially in the city of Kennewick as an elected official there. We have an aquifer on the backside of Thompson's Hill that is not even being tapped into. We're looking at in the next several years of tying in 20 to 30,000 homes in our community between Kennewick and Richland to tie into that area to where we can have runoff from the rain in an environmentally safe capacity to where we can allow that to get back into our water supply system. We allow that storage to be monitored, and that's one big piece a lot of people are worried about with the groundwater and some of the things that you see around our communities around the world, like Flint, Michigan, and places that have some issues with their water supply. Want to make sure we stay on top of that. One of the other things that we've done in the city of Kennewick is partner with the Downtown Historic District, Port of Kennewick, and the Benton County to have a wine village. And you may have heard of that in the news, and one of our shining stars of that is that the City of Kennewick Public Works Department did a limited budget to allow that to get into a filtration system that was approved by the state of Washington, and we won awards throughout the state and the nation for having that filtration system in place in case we do have this precipitation, thanks Tracy, in case we have that, and we have additional contingency to allow for the additional rainfall as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Binky. Mr. Tracy.
This is really quite a multifaceted question, and I think I need to approach it on two levels. First of all, we need to reduce our carbon footprint so we can have a much friendlier environment going forward. So we don't have the heavy rains, so we don't have the terribly warm summers coming forward. So that's one of the things that the legislature has not been very successful working on, and it's an area of concern that I will be working on going forward. Secondly, we don't have a sustainable budget. So a lot of the funds that sometimes cities and counties will rely on to provide this kind of infrastructure that you're talking about have been raided when times are poor. When money's not available, they go and raid the fund from like the PWTF, which provides funding, capital funding for projects. Or we see that the fees that are supposed to be shared with cities and counties sometimes are siphoned to the state budget. So we have to really also work on a sustainable tax base so we can provide all of this stuff. And right now, we rob Peter to pay Paul. That's how we funded McCleary, by not really funding some of the other things we really need to be funding. We have to look for a more fair way to raise revenue. We're currently using a system that was basically devised during the Great Depression. We can do better.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. McConnell.
Okay, yeah, I think there's been, for decades, the state has talked about the need to increase storage in water storage in the state. There's been multiple projects that just have not moved forward. It's an issue that the state needs to keep the pressure on the federal government for, that the state needs to start looking at ways to partner with counties, cities, and the federal government to provide the necessary storage to deal with the changes in precipitation and runoff, and to ensure that we have appropriate supplies of water going forward. I want to applaud the city of Kennewick and the things that they're doing to address stormwater runoff. That's an important aspect of what we need to do. But I think the priority needs to be continuing to look at significant storage capabilities in the Yakima Basin in particular.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Tracy, you are up first this time. We'll go back to an audience question. On what issues would you work with the other political party?
What a great question. You know, I've been a collective bargainer for 20 years. It's the teachers on one side, it's the administration on the other. I produced, as the senior contract negotiator, some of the very best teacher contracts in our state. I won't say it's the best in the state, but everyone will say it's in the top 10. How do you do that? I'm a teacher, and a lot of times you talk about children, you say, he or she plays well with others. I play well with others. I work for compromise. I'm not way over here. I'm not way over here. In fact, I describe myself as a moderate Democrat. I can learn from just about everyone. And I found that on both sides, there are often really good points that you can build on. And I look for bridges. And that's why in the contracts that I negotiated over a 20-year period, we had no strikes. And when they talk about teacher pay, my teachers do make $100,000 at the top of the pay schedule. No strikes. We got the job done.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. McConnell.
Well, I am a conservative fiscal advocate and proud to be a Republican. The Republican Party will be in the minority, more than likely, in the state legislature. So I guess the answer to which issues will I work across the aisle on is pretty simple. It's all of them. If you're not willing to reach across the aisle and work and listen to the other side, chances of you advancing your principles are pretty small. And so I think the answer really is all of them. You know, my career has been giving me a unique opportunity to be a student of government. You know, I've led editorial boards where we've had candidates for political office, ranging from the Port District to the City Council to the Governor's Office to candidates for State Supreme Court, come in and sit down in the same room and debate public issues. I've listened to the opponents and proponents of statewide initiatives state their case. I've listened to two sides of an issue use the very same WSU study to refute the other's points. Among the things I've learned the most throughout my career is that there is no single party that has all the answers, and there's no single party that is always wrong. We need to listen to each other, we need to work together, and we need to fight to advance our principles in a constructive and pragmatic way.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Binky.
Thanks, Tracy. I agree. One of the biggest things about all these issues is listening and having a civil discourse. I think both sides, all sides, frankly, are tired of what's been going on the last couple of years. And if I took a poll in the audience, I guess you guys would agree. We're not really into this bashing of other people. What I'm trying to do is bring back, and we've done this in the city of Kennewick, is go out to the high schools, bring back the respect that I think people need and have earned over the years. It's okay to disagree with other people. It's okay to have a forum like this today, to have differing views that come out there. I've been in other countries. I've been in foreign countries. I've been in combat several times. And you see the good, bad, and the ugly about this. And that's why you come back to a country like this and you thank God you're a part of the United States of America and proud of it. And what that brings us is that opportunity to have these disagreements with respect and honor of other people, to where what I grew up with is core values that we need to bring back. Those are in tour to where we can discuss these issues and then bring that about. And then at the end of the day, go out and have a cup of coffee, have a drink, or have something else, and still be friends, be neighbors. Go out to your neighbors and help each other out. I think we need to get back to the core values that we have in our society as a community base that we are here today. And my big three, again, being a teacher, is education. I want to support the education as much as possible. Energy, I think we have a great opportunity. We have the most number of PhDs in the world right here in the Tri-Cities. Why aren't we leveraging that for better technology to look at our economy and showcase our diversity in our economy and the things we can do? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Binky. Mr. McConnell, you're up first again. For students who don't qualify for things like the College Bound program, tuition at state universities can leave many with very large student loans once they graduate. Do you see any relief in the future to make college more affordable for Washington residents?
Well, yes, and I think that, again, that's an issue, and it was addressed earlier, in that we have spent decades telling our young people that to be successful, they needed that baccalaureate degree. And oftentimes they walked away with a degree and a significant amount of student debt, and actually not a great opportunity for a career. I think what's important first is that we need to create a strategy for the state of Washington that ties, our entire education system, K through 12, high school, and higher education, to the needs of the workforce, both current and future needs of the workforce. And we need to start providing people alternate paths to success in the technical and trades fields. And we need to start in high school, because that's where kids start making a decision as to whether they see a future for themselves or potentially dropping out. I think we need to have the courage to address the cost of higher education and how those dollars are in fact being spent. I think higher education in this state is pretty highly siloed, and I think it's time for a state approach and state strategies to make sure that our students are getting the maximum bang for the buck for those high tuitions that they are paying, and that in fact what we are delivering are people who are workforce ready and hopeful and have an opportunity to be successful in the future without insurmountable debt. So I think we have to approach it from multiple sides, but we can't be afraid to address what's driving up that high cost of higher education.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Binky?
Thanks. I agree in retrospect here. The alternatives are number one. Being a teacher, you need to have the opportunities. So as a kid growing up, it shouldn't be one career path for all, fits all. We have at CBC what's called an online, hybrid, and in the classroom opportunities. So as the technology and the diverse opportunities come about, we can offer these different exchange of knowledge and exchange of information that we can allow the teachers to get out into the community in the best way we possibly can. I could actually teach a class right now as we're speaking and then have homework assignments here about an hour or so. Leveraging technology getting out to the community, working with the K through 12, we have what's called career pathways. Allows you that opportunity when I was in 8th grade to decide by a bunch of questions if I'm going to be a firefighter, a lawyer, a teacher, whichever. A lot of times those opportunities aren't open for male and women that are out there. Also, and being a cybersecurity expert, why aren't we getting more and more women and minorities into the technical fields? I want to push for that as well, and I think we can get more of that STEM education in there. I kind of disagree with my opponent that I think the state has already screwed up some of that. You can't just keep pushing money down to fix a problem. I think now it's management of those funds at the local level of how we can then administrate that better to allow that opportunity to get a lower cost for an opportunity of a community-based solution here in the Tri-Cities, and I think we have that, and be proud to honored to have you guys over at Columbia Basin College and tour my classroom anytime you want.
Thank you, Mr. Binky. Mr. Tracy.
Let's kind of review what happened last legislative session. During the Great Recession, higher education took really hits in the budget, and they haven't fully recovered. When the Democrats took control last session, one of the signature items that they did was that they increased the number of slots. And in other words, the number of people that can be admitted to higher education. So that's one of the things that we've done to move forward. But we need to really make higher education a much higher priority. We need to lower tuition. I worked my way through college at the University of Washington, and I got through in 4 years. You can't do that anymore. And it's unfair for kids to graduate with huge college debt or for their parents to rob their retirement funds so they can afford to send their children to college. We can do better through a fair tax system where not just a few tax breaks are given to a few businesses, but where we all pay our fair share, and where the very, very wealthy pay their fair share as well. We can make this work. It needs to be a higher priority. And also, state residents need to get priority in admission to our colleges and universities. I don't want to see people from California and Colorado and Connecticut and China there when my children or your grandchildren weren't admitted, even though they were fully qualified.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. Binky, you're up first this time. There were major changes made to the juvenile justice system through laws passed in the last legislative session. They include more discretion for prosecutors, being able to stay in the juvenile system past the age of 21, and more opportunities for rehabilitation. Do you agree with these changes? Why or why not?
I think everybody should get a second chance. I think one of the big pushes there was what we see in the Benton County area is the public safety sales tax. I think I disagree with the fact that you should have a slush fund over $15.1 million in their accounts, that I think that money could be best utilized out in our communities. And even at the last the Benton County Republican Party meeting, we had a discussion with EMS services out to our county. We do not have ambulance service right now in under 20 minutes out to our county areas, and I think that's wrong. I think we have money we can put right now today and buy 2 ambulance, get certified technicians, EMS services out there to do that. I think juveniles coming through the system need a second chance to do this. Everybody should have a second chance. I think there's an opportunity to be accountable as a student, as a kid, to grow up in the Tri-Cities and actually go off and fly helicopters and jump out of airplanes and fight for your country. And I know a kid sitting right here who's done that. I wasn't the best and brightest, and I know a lot of people in this room were some of my teachers, and some of the teachers around here were going to vote for me, and they're going to continue to vote for me, and they continue to help mentor me and become the person I am today, and I want to continue that for the next generation.
Thank you, Mr. Binky. Mr. Tracy.
More money for earlier interventions. It's money well spent. I have found in my teaching career, and much of my teaching career, and by the way, I've taught kindergarten through graduate school, but most of my teaching career generally was with 14 and 15-year-old students. And I have found that if you can provide them with extra support and help, you can make a difference in their lives. that will last a lifetime. So when you ask, do I support the money that was spent and appropriated for early intervention for juveniles? You better believe it. It's money well spent. And I will continue to fight for those kinds of things. I've personally worked with many kids that were the ones that the shop teacher wouldn't take, or the PE teacher was scared to have, because they were some of the most difficult boys in the school. But I would have them one-on-one as my library research assistants, where they, by the way, got high school graduation credit for occupational ed. And that extra time, that extra money, it's worth it. We can do this, and I applaud the legislature for passing that.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. McConnell.
Well, I agree with the other candidates in supporting, giving that latitude to the local jurisdictions and justice system. I think even more important is that we need to provide those systems of support and case management once those young people come out of the system. I'd like to see the legislature start addressing giving our law enforcement and courts more latitude when it comes to dealing with the mental health system, and providing the kinds of case management and community-based housing that will give those people an opportunity to be successful and to end that vicious cycle of recidivism that happens when people with mental health issues are intersecting with our law enforcement. I think that mental health is an issue that is probably our next to McCleary. I think it goes down to our inability and unwillingness to address the resources necessary in our schools to provide the mental health intervention that is necessary. We need to continue to do that and to work in concert with the justice system to make sure that those charged with keeping us safe have the support and have the latitude to make the appropriate decisions, and that we've got the support system on the other end of the criminal justice system to help people stay out of that vicious cycle of recidivism.
Thank you very much, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Tracy, for the last question, you will be first. And we'll take an audience question. I think we all know that it's a very divisive time in politics, in culture, in the state, in our community. So this question struck me. What will you do to bring us together?
The easy answer, but really the correct answer, is to be a good listener and respect the people that you talk with, even if they don't completely agree with you. Often you can learn from them. I mentioned earlier, I play well with others. Sometimes my own bargaining team would say, hey, remember what side you're on. It's not about sides, it's about getting things done. My whole campaign is about getting things done and protecting the backs of people. And to do that, you have to listen. You have to be respectful. You have to care. I'm a public servant. I'm not a politician.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. McConnell.
Well, yeah, I agree. Listening is key. If as a journalist for 40 years, that's what we did. And if we're not willing to listen to the opinions of those that disagree with us, then they're certainly not going to listen to us, and we're not going to move forward in a positive way. I think it's important that we reach out and make an effort to engage those people who may disagree. Some of the most rewarding conversations I've had out ringing doorbells, and there's been thousands of them in the last couple of months, have been with people who first looked at me and said, "Oh, you're a Republican, I don't want to talk to you." And I think that I've actually started seeking those folks out and saying, hey, let's talk about what your concerns are. Let's talk about why you view me in that light, simply because I'm from the Republican Party. I think we have more in common than we have that's different. And I think that's the case for most of us. We live in a day of incitement politics where we tend to let the angriest voices win in the election. From the far right and the far left, it's the angriest voices that always win, and we tend to be a little afraid to reach across that divide and say, you know, you're not my enemy. We can disagree, but we can work together to make a positive difference. And I think that's what I bring to this race, is my years in journalism, listening to both sides, offer few solutions, and a lot of anger. And I think that it's time that we set those things aside and we reach out and we partner with people that don't agree with us.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Binky.
Thanks, Tracy. Like I said before, one of the big values of an officer in the United States Army and the military are our core values. When we have an acronym that's called leadership, it's spelled out in that. And these are words that actually mean things to us when we go into combat and we tell our families. A lot of people don't see that. I tell people the L stands for loyalty, duty, respect is the big R, selfless service, honesty, integrity. These are not fancy words. These are words my parents, my grandparents, and things have raised me as well. And that's what I want to bring back also. I believe my experienced leadership is what comes to that. When you deploy overseas, and you've done this for over 21 years, you want to bring this back to your community. And that's what I want to bring back. I want to bring the similarities that you can reach across the aisle and discuss that, like I mentioned before, in a respectful manner, that you can disagree. You can look at the similarities, and at the end of the day, go out and have a cup of coffee and go out your business. So we do this all the time with our neighbors, try to break down those barriers. And one of the big things I like to do is the new technology, and we've given classroom time to this. We get off of Facebook. I know that's scary, but it's okay to get off Facebook. I'm allowing you that tonight. And Twitter and those things, and put them aside and kind of do a cleanse of your life and get out and walk around our beautiful parks and our areas around these Tri-Cities. I think we have a great thing we have going here. I kind of don't want to spread the word, but I do want to make sure we're the shining star in the desert, and I've used that in a couple of campaigns, and I think we have a lot to offer if people can get out and meet friends, meet neighbors again like we used to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Binky. It's now time for closing statements. Once again, Mr. McConnell, you filed first. You go first. 1.5 minutes.
Okay. First of all, I want to again thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum, and thank those of you who came out tonight or who'll be watching this broadcast for your time and your interest. Voter turnout, especially in primaries, tends to be very low. The core voting blocs on each side of the political divide reliably turn out to support their party's preferred candidate. Often those candidates are chosen because they have stirred the passions of the party's extreme factions. But the folks in the middle, the 36,000 plus voters in this district who consider themselves independent or swing voters, traditionally skip the primary. There's too much at stake for that to happen this year. Those of you who believe the time has come for a different kind of representation in Olympia need to vote in the primary. You need to vote for me. And you need to encourage your friends and neighbors to do so as well. It's time that our representation in Olympia truly reflected the character of this amazing, diverse, dynamic, and rapidly evolving community. Thank you. I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Binky.
Thanks again to the League of Women Voters and to all who attended tonight and those online, like we'd mentioned before. Humbly ask and support your vote for my position here as a representative of you, the citizens. And again, that means a lot to me. I'll be there representing you as a selfless servant that will listen, that will honor that commitment to be up there, to do what I can for the 8th District, to be the best it can be, to steal a phrase from the military again, that I think we have a lot going on here. I think it's more positive than people see. I think reading too much on Facebook and social media needs to take a downturn, and we can actually get out and meet and communicate with each other. Thanks for hosting this event tonight and allow us this civil exchange and civil discourse so we can have a good exchange of ideas and discuss that in a civil manner. I want to thank the endorsements that I have today. First and foremost, Larry Haler, the Washington State representative, had this seat, was a big mentor that came out to me and approached me. And again, thank my wife and kids because, of course, she make sure I say that, but and I can't get home if I don't, but and the friends and family, because we're up here, we can't do this without our friends and families that support this. And it is a tough job to get in front of people to do this, but having Benton City Mayor John Trumbo, Bill McKay, Paul Parrish, other council members who are there that supported me, is also Sheriff Hatcher and a lot of leadership in the community, but also the commitment from the firefighters, the police, the Carpenters Union, the Realtors, and the Home Builders Association of the Tri-Cities have all reached out to endorse me and look together to join in an alliance to move forward to the state of Washington. Appreciate your vote tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Binky. Mr. Tracy.
I'd like to answer 2 questions in my final comments. What's worth fighting for? What I think's worth fighting for is to watch the backs of students, to provide smaller classes, smaller caseloads for specialists that deal with sometimes kids that have the most learning difficulties, to provide more support for them, to fight for quality medical care at an affordable price for families. And I've done both of those. I want to work for fair salaries for workers. I want to reward our veterans and fight for the disabled or the senior citizens. I believe that our budget should be sustainable. It's not. And I've negotiated contracts in good times and in bad. And when the economy went south, we didn't lay off any teachers in my district. It was my plan that was adopted for doing the budget to cut $1 million from staffing, but we did it without, believe it or not, laying off a single person. We need to have a system where all people pay fair taxes. Not just a few businesses that get tax exemptions and tax loopholes, but a fair system. And who'll get things done? The Democrats are in charge right now. An Eastern Washington Democrat will have a seat at the table of leadership immediately. I can deliver my promises. Thank you very much. I would appreciate your vote. I'm tanned, I'm rested, I'm ready, and I'm competent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tracy. And I want to thank all of these candidates for being here today. Before you go, just remember, tell all your family and friends who weren't lucky enough to be here that this will be re-aired on Richland City View. Thank you very much to Mike Charbonneau. He's the Cable Communications Coordinator for Richland City View Television. That's channel 192. For recording this event for many years, Mike and his counterpart, John Funfar, over in Pasco, have been instrumental in helping the league present these forums, and we greatly appreciate them. We also want to thank the City of Richland for the use of this facility. Remember to vote on August 7th. Tell your family and friends.